Good evening and welcome everybody to November 5th meeting of Committee B. I'm just going to quickly run you through some quick housekeeping points before we start the main meeting. First of all, we're not expecting a fire alarm today, so if you do hear the fire alarm, unfortunately that does mean that we will need to evacuate the building. It's very unlikely that will happen, but just in case, the way that we would need to do that is to go back out through the main entrance and we'll be escorted to the mustering point, which is in St John's Churchyard, about 100 metres down the road that way, but there will be fire wardens on site to help you, unlikely event that happens. If you haven't found them already, if you need the public toilets, you can go out this door and take the passageway opposite and then turn left. You'll find the toilets both for ladies and gents down the end of that corridor. And if you need refreshments, we have a drinks machine and snacks machine out in the waiting area where you're in for coming into this meeting. Just if you've got a phone on you, do please switch it to silent, or if you can dare to, turn it off for the meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel, so if at any point you're coming to represent to the committee, please don't disclose any information for us that you would like to not to be in the public domain. So, for example, any private information about your precise address and things. Members of the public are welcome to film, audio record, photograph or tweet about the proceedings of the meeting, but if you do so, please be considerate towards other people in the room and take care not to disturb the proceedings. If you do take any pictures or videos, please keep any cameras facing this way in the room. Don't take pictures of other members of the audience. Anybody who's sat on these tables has effectively given permission for being to have their photo taken. That's not true, anybody in the audience, so just be careful of that. During the meeting, members of the committee will not access the internet other than it relates to the official business of this meeting. Send or receive emails, text messages or tweets concerning the business of the committee, and that's so that it's transparent what the basis for those decisions are on this evening. I'd also like to remind speakers to use the microphones when speaking, as it's only audio from the microphones that can be captured on the live stream and therefore helps with the public record of this meeting. And if you are speaking and using the microphone, please don't put a mobile device, if it's still turned on, close to the microphone, as it does tend to cause some interference to make it all a bit unpleasant for everybody. That brings us onto the agenda. First of all, apologies for absence. I've had apologies from 3 councillors for absence, so Councillor Emily Tester, Councillor Joseph Vanby and Councillor Ketsia Harper for absence, and also have apologies from Councillor Cleo Stones for lateness. She'll be joining us in about 20 minutes time. And we do have, thankfully, thank you very much to Councillors Nick Johnson and Catherine Rose for agreeing to come along as reserves of the meeting to make sure that we have enough of this time. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask the members to identify yourselves so people know who's voting. So all voting members, raise your hands. And I'm now going to ask everybody around the table to introduce themselves so everybody knows who we are. So I'll start. I'm Councillor Richard Livingstone. I'm a councillor in Old Kent Road Ward and I'm chair of this committee. And if I start at that end with Councillor Rose.
Good evening everybody, I'm Councillor Catherine Rose. I'm a ward member for Dulwich Wood and I usually preside on the Committee A. But very welcome to be here tonight.
Hello, I'm Councillor Castleton. I'm a councillor in Rotherhithe Ward and the vice chair of the committee.
Councillor Nick Johnson from Surrey Docks Ward.
Right, Councillor Sam Dalton. I'm a councillor for London Bridge and West Bermondsey Ward.
And I'm now going to ask the officers to introduce themselves. So, starting with you, Colin.
I'm Colin Wilson. I'm the Assistant Director of Strategic Developments.
Legal Advisor.
I'm Joe Builder, I'm the committee clerk.
With mounting needs of strategic developments.
Good question for strategic applications.
And Emily Townsend, Senior Transport Planner.
Thank you, everybody. Notification of items of business which the chair deems urgent. We have had an addendum report, and we also have had members' pack which has been circulating to members. Disclosures of interest and dispensations. Does any member wish to declare any interest or dispensation in respect of any item or issue to be considered at this meeting? No? Thank you very much. That brings us to the minutes of our meeting that we held back on Wednesday the 10th of September, which is in pages 1 to 9 of the main agenda pack. Are members happy those are correct records of the meeting? Those that were there? Thank you. So that brings on to our first main item of business, which is item 6 on the agenda, and this is a release of £250,000 from Section 106 agreements for the delivery of the Mandela Way cycle infrastructure, and that's set out on pages 10 to 19 of the agenda pack. I'm going to turn to Emily Tadgell to introduce this item.
Thank you. So I'm going to be presenting the Section 106 release report for £250,000 from Section 106 agreements for the delivery of Mandela Way cycle infrastructure. So the recommendation is to approve the release of funds amounting to £250,000 to be applied towards Mandela Way cycling infrastructure, and that's also known as the scheme. The funds come from a Section 106 agreement dated 8th of February 2024 from application 23 AP0950. And the wording of the legal agreement is cycle infrastructure improvements contribution means the sum of £250,000 index linked to be paid to the council and applied towards the feasibility study for and works to implement improvements to cycle infrastructure on Mandela Way and junctions from Pages Walk and Dunton Road and the Rolls Road junction. So the scheme consists of design work and implementation of an infrastructure project on Mandela Way, and this follows a feasibility study completed by Highways in November 2023. The proposed measures include the addition of a bidirectional cycle lane along the carriageway, as well as safety improvements at junctions with Pages Walk, Dunton Road, and Rolls Road. And the scheme seeks to address road safety issues on Mandela Way, which is caused by the distribution hub, while also future-proofing the area for the predicted increases in cycling. And so the Old Kent Road AAP recognizes that the transport character of the Old Kent Road opportunity area is one of car dominance. It also states that in order to ensure servicing access to commercial uses in the future, Mandela Way will be retained as a two-way principal service route. So it's important to note that the Mandela Way area will see an increase of homes and jobs resulting from development, and the population increase is predicted to increase the number of cycling trips on Mandela Way itself. So cycling safety improvements, which can include segregated cycle lanes, are necessary to ensure cyclists can travel safely alongside the service vehicles. And so alongside the scheme, Mandela Way will also be receiving additional healthy streets upgrades, that's going to include new planting and improved pavements. Mandela Way Park is also proposed to help deliver the greener belt and support the intensification of land uses. And the scheme would act as a key town centre link, which provides direct access to the Old Kent Road, which you can see in the image there. And so the scheme is aligned with Southwark's strategic objectives, specifically from Streets for People and the associated delivery plan, the Southwark Council delivery plan, the cycling plan, the Southwark plan, and the climate action plan. And so the relevant objectives for Streets for People are Objective 1, reduce the need to own or use a car. Objective 4, improve safety and security for everyone using our streets. Objectives 5 and 6, make walking, cycling, and wheeling easier for everyone. Objective 9, reduce the impact of freight on our streets and support businesses to operate sustainably and efficiently. And Objective 11, reduce emissions from transport and improve air quality. From the council delivery plan, relevant actions are to roll out more segregated cycle lanes and to improve safety at junctions and crossings. There are also quite a few points about working with local communities to improve our areas. There's also the climate action plan with the relevant priority 2, active and sustainable travel, which says that Southwark should be a borough where walking and cycling becomes the default way to get around. And in terms of consultation, because the scheme is still in the early stages of design, there's not been any public consultation that has taken place yet, but approval of this funding would enable community engagement to help shape the design. And once the design is finished, further statutory consultation will be undertaken by Highways as usual. So again, at this stage, the scheme would only involve design work, but the infrastructure would not be implemented until all the community impacts have been considered. In general, all transport schemes would aim to improve the safety and security of vulnerable groups and also support economic development by improving the overall system. And additional work will be undertaken during the next design stage to review whether any further accessibility improvements can be made as part of this scheme's detailed design. And we'll also be undertaking a quality impact and needs assessment after the scheme is designed and before it's implemented. Looking at the health impacts, again, going back to Streets for People, achieving these objectives will improve health outcomes through addressing toxic air pollution, the climate emergency, and the inactivity crisis. Southwark is also committed to Vision Zero in Streets for People in 2023. That's TfL's mission to have 0 people killed or seriously injured on London streets by 2041. So reducing conflict between cyclists, pedestrians, and vehicles would, over time, reduce road traffic accidents and help us achieve Vision Zero. And finally, for public health, safer cycling routes would encourage active travel and less reliance on motor vehicles, and therefore have wider health benefits. For climate change implications, achieving net zero emissions by 2030 would require a reduction in vehicle kilometers traveled and a shift to active and public transport. And it's worth noting that transport currently accounts for 20% of the borough's emissions, of which around 99% come from on-road transport. So the proposed scheme supports modal shift away from private car ownership and towards active travel. And again, the climate action plan, the scheme would also support the aims of this under priority 2. And all staff resource implications would be contained within the existing highway structure. And in terms of finance, the estimated cost for the delivery of the design stage is less than 50K. And the remaining funds released for the scheme would be put towards the implementation, which is expected to cost more than the remaining 200K, but the shortfall in funding could be covered by alternative high-risk funding. And again, just to note that the financial contributions can only be used towards feasibility study 4 and works to implement improvements to cycle infrastructure on the Delaware and junctions from Pages Walk and Denton Road and the Rolls Road junction. And that's all.
Thank you very much. That's very clear. That's helpful. Any questions? I'm going to go to Councillor Wood.
Just looking at slide 12, just want to check that once the design is finalised, further statutory consultation will be undertaken by Highway. It's not to be paid for by this money.
I believe that is contained within their budget for the design phase.
So it is part of this money.
I believe so, yes.
I would have thought the statutory consultation would have to not come out.
Catherine, I think right. In terms of the money, the majority, I think this money will be spent on design work. So the statutory consultation associated with that. I mean, it's the highways to plan to have a budget for undertaking statutory consultation. So I think it's safe to say that this money is going to be spent on design rather than on the administration, because there already is a base budget to cover those things in their budget. That's what adds in planning and base budget.
That's helpful, thank you. It might be useful if we could get a sort of note to members to confirm that after the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Rose.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I declare an interest really because I cycled through this area. In fact, I did this journey this evening to get here, and I avoid my Delaware. But my observation and lived experience is there's an incredible amount of cycle congestion running through residential areas around Loxley Close, and as heading up towards that corridor, Chaucer Drive, Linton Road, and then up to Willow Walk. It's an incredibly popular route. So in that regard, a scheme-based and related works around my Delaware to encourage people to use that more direct route would be welcome and actually help to accommodate the increasing volume of cycling throughout the day, especially at peak times. And I just wondered whether the point around statutory consultation not being eligible for funding, where that sits as part of this process, because often in Streets of People we do pre-statutory consultation, don't we, which is a broader consultative objective, which might well be funded or supplemented by the Streets of People budget itself, but traffic management orders and the statutory end of it at the end, towards the end of that process, it'd probably be easy to isolate and ensure that that wasn't funded through this monies and it all went to design, but I think it's a good point to raise. And do you, because that's my lived experience, but has this scheme been driven by planning policy because it's known and understood about the increase in cycling in that area?
Yes, so it is a result of the increase in cycling now and also the projected increase in the future. So highways have been considering that and how they can sort of ensure that cyclists are given priority in terms of safety on the road.
I'm sure you're going to do this, but it'd be good to capture the baseline position and then as this design, it also helps with consultation, doesn't it, in terms of understanding what the current situation and the issues are and what good might look like, and working with the community to deliver that in a phased way, and then look at the data post-implementation. So thank you.
I'm back to Councillor Johnson, but just on that point, my understanding is where this money has come from the Solid Logistics Hub, which is nearing completion at the moment, and obviously part of what the Logistics Hub will have is cargo lights and things like that. So actually, Hub itself is increasing the amount in its through its own operation amount of cycles that will be used everybody. So this is partly mitigating as well the extra cycle usage which that development will be creating. That's fair, isn't it? Yeah. Good. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about safety and design relating to bi-directional motorways. Now, when traffic comes onto Madellaway, the temptation of any driver will be sort of towards the oncoming traffic. Presumably with a bi-directional cycle lane, traffic could be coming from behind the car, so the driver may not notice. I wondered if we had any data on the level of safety around bi-directional versus unidirectional highways, cycle highways. Is one safer than the other?
I don't have that on me right now, but I'm sure highways would have some thoughts on that and potentially some data to back that up as well. Maybe even in the area, so that's something we can definitely find.
And if I may just as a follow-up, if the data does imply that bi-directional highways has a higher incidence of bikes T-burning cars, whether there's anything we can do in terms of signage to remind drivers to look both ways.
Any further questions at this stage? Councillor Whitton?
Yeah, just on that, I'm sure we will know statistics will be useful those sort of numbers because we've been monitoring that for a year now. So that should be available.
That's very helpful. Okay, unless there are any further questions, I'm going to move this forward to a decision on this item. So I'd like to move that we adopt the officer's recommendations as set out in paragraph 1 on page 10 of the agenda pack. The planning committee approves the release of funds amounting to £250,000, which were paid to the council pursuant to the terms of section 106 agreement dated the 8th of February 2024, which was entered into in relation to the planning application bearing reference 23 AB 0950, so as I said, this is Logistics Hub, and such sums be applied towards the Mandela Way cycle infrastructure scheme. Does any member of the committee wish to second this? That's Councillor Whitton I saw first. Apologies, Councillor Johnson. That's seconded by Councillor Whitton. I'm going to ask everybody how it wishes to vote on this. So, Councillor Whitton.
Water.
Councillor Dawson. Chair. Councillor Johnson.
Chair.
Councillor Rose.
Chair.
Councillor Richard Livingstone. I'm also going to vote for that. So that is carried. Thank you very much, Emily. We're going to take a very short break whilst we wait for Councillor Stones to get here. So if you do need to use facilities, please do, but we will reconvene very shortly for the main item on the agenda. Made it on, yes, and I've not heard anything further from her, so we'll reconvene the meeting. We do have a very short item before we come on to the planning application, just to agree how we determine our application. So I'd like to remind everyone on the committee of the guidance of how we conduct business. First of all, for any application we're considering, officers will present the report, outline their recommendations and answer questions raised by the committee. Secondly, if present and wishing to speak, the following may then address the committee for no more than 3 minutes each. First of all, spokesperson representing any objectors to the application. I know you should have identified a single spokesperson, or if there's more than one of you, agreed between you how you will use that 3 minutes of time between you. Secondly, the applicant or their agent. Thirdly, a spokesperson representing any supporters of the application within 100 metres of the development site. And finally, ward council representing the area affected by the proposal. So, board members, those nominated to speak on behalf of the objectors, supporters and applicant should sit as far forward and so we will come to, we will ask people if they want to come forward when we reach that point in the meeting, so apologies, if that wasn't clear. So we'll when we go through each application, I will call out to see if there's objectors or applicants or supporters for the scheme and ask those people to come forward at that stage. As I said, if people do want to address us, if they can sit as far forward in the room as possible, that's particularly important for the applicants in case there's any questions we need to ask at a later stage of the meeting. However, it's not an opportunity for those people to speak outside of their elected spot when they make their representation to us, and it's not an opportunity to participate in the main debate of the committee. Each speaker should restrict their comments to the planning aspects of the proposal and should avoid repeating information which is already in the report. Just to be clear, the meeting is not a hearing where participants present evidence that is then cross-examined by other participants. At the end of each representation, the committee may ask questions of the presenter. Speakers should lead the committee to subjects on which they will welcome further questioning. That is particularly useful, I find, for people that are presenting who think that 3 minutes allotted to them isn't quite enough time to get all their points across. So if that may be the case, it's best to use the 3 minutes to summarise all of the points and identify when they're speaking on what points they welcome further questioning from the committee. After receiving all the submissions, the committee will debate the application and consider the recommendation. This is a council committee meeting which is open to the public and there should be therefore no interruptions from the audience. Finally, I'd like everyone present to know that although the planning committee comprises members from different political parties, even more so tonight than in previous evenings, we are not politically lit. Our decisions are made in accordance with the council's planning policy and are based on the information contained within the relevant reports, together with consultation with sponsors and any further submissions made today. How we approach these applications is set out in the development management report at item 7 on the agenda. If members are happy to note the report, we'll then move on to considering planning applications.
Are members happy that we will proceed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, as Councillor Soames has not made it yet, unfortunately she won't be able to participate in this item, but we will move on to item 7.1, which is application 24AB 3621, Coburg House, which is located at 367 Newton Causeway, London, SE1 6LS. And I'd like to turn to Wynne Lau to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. I would first like to draw the members to the addendum report that's just being issued to you. This just provides some of the additional information that's been submitted since the publication of the main report, and also some clarifications and corrections to the main report. A revised roof plan has been submitted, which shows additional solar roof on the lower top roof terrace, and that improves the urban green factor to 0.42 from the original scheme of 0.34. This is quite welcomed, and it means that it now meets the recommended score of 0.4. The report does say that there should be a contribution of £56,000 towards borough tree planting, but now because it complies with the guidance and policy, there is no longer a requirement for that financial contribution. And since the preparation of the committee report, further comments have been received from members of the public, which is one, and the comments are set out below in that addendum report, and in summary it is around the determination date and whether this application should be, this committee meeting should be postponed for more time to analyse the data that's been submitted. They mentioned that the proposed development would overshadow their property, which is very close to the existing windows, and the daylight and sunlight report is incomplete, and there are errors and clarifications required. The officer's response is the impact on daylight and sunlight are discussed within the main report, and additional data that has been submitted is around cumulative scenario with Borough Triangle and Avonmouth House on the site. The height and massing of the development and footprint has not changed, so the impacts of those on the adjoining properties have not changed either. And the objection that's been submitted by that resident does not specify what exactly those errors are, so and officers can therefore not address them. There's also some clarifications to report, and that's to paragraph 112, and there's also a change to condition 24 that's in the appendix 1, and then two additional conditions that have been proposed, and that's with regards to details of hatching to the forecourt and also an area for e-scooter bays. And finally, an additional condition to control the hours of the third floor terrace use. I'll now just go to my main presentation. So 0.109 hectares head site is located on Newton Causeway in close junction with Avonmouth Street. The site is within the Castle Opportunity Area from the Central Activity Zone in an area of the highest transport accessibility. The building within the red line is commonly known as Coburg House. It should be noted that the site to the southeast to the rear, with the text in blue, is the applicant owns that building and is previously known as Avonmouth House, which was granted planning permission on appeal in 2023 for student accommodation. Here are just some photos showing the site and surroundings with view from Newton Causeway. The building is the red brick building, four-storey building in the first photo, and is currently occupied by the Department of Work and Pensions Job Centre, and also a separate tenant occupying the third floor used as offices. And immediately to the north, the building in blue is Fountain House, or 57 to 61 Newton Causeway. It's a 5-storey mixed-use building with commercial on the ground floor and residential above. And along Newton Causeway to the south, you'll see 4-storey buildings accommodating office use, and also Southwark Playhouse further to the south. This is the aerial view of the site prior to Avonmouth House being developed. And the photo on the right will show you that the new building is currently being constructed. There's also to Avonmouth Street in the aerial photo, which is immediately to the north of the existing building. This is a 4-storey block of flats. The surrounding area is urban in character, and directly opposite to the east of the site is a site commonly known as Borough Triangle, which is identified on major mixed-use phase redevelopment and was recently granted planning permission in June 2025. Borough Triangle has a number of buildings on site with a range of uses, but most notably is occupied by Macarthur Metropolitan. It's worth noting that the planning permission for Borough Triangle comprises 4 buildings ranging in height from 10, 14, 38 to 44 stories. And this long Avonmouth house development, which goes up to 16 stories, will change this immediate part of the townscape in the near future. And to the south of Newington Causeways, the uses are predominantly commercial and cultural, including the Southwark Playhouse. In terms of policy designations, sites within the Central Activity Zone, Elephant Castle Opportunity Area, and Elephant Castle Town Centre, and the Strategic Cultural Quarter. It also comprises part of the land falling within the site allocation NSP 46. NSP site 46 site allocation is slightly larger than the application area, and for this specific site, the NSP 46 subdivision states that redevelopment of the site must provide at least the amount of employment floor space, so that's class EG or B class currently on site, and also provide active frontages on the ground floor on Newington Causeway. It does state that the redevelopment of the site should also provide new homes, and it may provide a new community health hub. And it also recognises that some tall buildings will be necessary to deliver some of those objectives. The site is not within a conservation area, however there are conservations within this facility, but they are at least 240 metres away from the site. There are no statutory listed buildings on the site, but there are listed buildings nearby, and the closest one is the intersection support, which is grade 2 estate, grade 1, shaded in blue on that plan. Moving on to the application itself, the scheme involves the demolition of the existing 4-storey building and erection of a building plus basement comprising commercial floor space, 243 purpose-built student accommodation, PBSA, and community space. This slide shows the different heights and uses of the building, with commercial uses on the ground to 2nd floor levels, and the PBSA reception and cinema spaces are on the ground and 1st floor levels. The areas of the building shaded green are the cluster rooms, with the yellow in the corner being the communal kitchen, living diner, and the building is 19 stories facing Newington Causeway, and then it steps out to 18 stories to the rear, and then steps down further to 3 stories facing the Avonmouth Street. So the proposals were direct let PBSA with 209 ensuite rooms, 21 studios, and 13 wheelchair studios. So typically, the student rooms are arranged as 1 10-bed cluster rooms and 5 bed cluster per floor, with a larger shared living kitchen dining corner northeast. 17th and 18th floors change from that typical floor plan to become self-contained studio units, and the 3rd floor communal terrace is proposed. On the ground floor, we have flexible Class E floor space proposed. It extends from the basement to the 2nd floor levels, and the commercial floor space has a separate entrance from Newington Causeway, and also a secondary entrance from Avonmouth Street, and that's labelled in blue on the plan there. There will be an ancillary cafe linked to the office on the Newington Causeway frontage, so that provides that active frontage that's been required from the site allocation. And the PBSA a reception, could be from via Avonmouth Street, but also a secondary entrance from Newington Causeway. This is just the elevation fronting Newington Causeway, which shows the main entrance to commercial space. And the front elements of the building has been designed as one volume with ribbed buff brick and recessed grey panels, so giving that texture to that volume. The front facade has varying layers of detail set back from the main face of the building, dividing this central element into smaller elements. We have north-east elevation here, facing Avonmouth Street, which shows clearly how the building steps down from Newington Causeway to Avonmouth Street. And this also shows a completed Avonmouth House development in the rear for context. This is the south and west elevation showing the recessed panels and piers to break up this facade, and Avonmouth House to the right here. The proposed design utilises brick as the primary cladding material. There are 3 tones being proposed here to give the masses articulation and allow the design to respond to its context. A lighter, almost stone-like tone is used at the base to reflect the historic character of Newington Causeway, and then there'll be a slight tonal shift used in the middle border that distinguishes the main body of the tower from the base. And to the rear of the building, the choice of bricks and detailing ties in even more closely with the Avonmouth House development. So these varying planes and materials provide further richness to this facade. Piers on the facade will vary in depth, and horizontal bandings added at various floors to split this one element. There will also be sage-coloured vertical gris soleil feature that provides contrast in colour and also provides shading to the rooms. Here are just a couple of CGIs, obviously looking south on Newington Causeway. The first one on the right there is just to the north of the site, looking from the Borough Triangle site. There, as you can see, in the image to the right, there are existing taller buildings within the vicinity of the site. You can see Eileen House with 251 Southwark Bridge Road to the right of the proposed development, and then a kite building or ceramic building just to the rear of the development. Here are a few more CGIs looking north on Newington Causeway, and then the second image is a view from Bath Terrace Green, and then you can see the kite building there on the left, shaded in multicolored blue. This slide shows that surrounding developments are being completed and recently been granted, and that's highlighted, shaded in purple. In terms of the emerging context, there are several developments coming forward very close to the site, including Borough Triangle and Avonmouth House. The site is within an area where it is expected to have tall building, being in the central activity zone, major town centre opportunity area. And the site allocation does note that comprehensive mixed-use redevelopment of the site could include taller buildings, subject to consideration of impacts on existing character, heritage, and townscape. In terms of consultation, approximately a total of 9 objections, 2 in support and 1 neutral comments has been received, and most of the responses highlight that the building is too tall and not compatible with the surrounding area, and that there isn't really a need for student accommodation in the area. Residents and members of the public also commented that there is no on-site affordable housing, and other comments emphasised impact on neighbours' amenity, including overshadowing, loss of privacy, traffic impacts and strain on existing infrastructure. Turning now to principle of development, the Southwark plan policy does require, in this location and site location, that development must retain or increase the amount of employment floor space on the site. And as you can see from this table, there will be a net loss of office floor space. But it is important to emphasise that the applicant had originally proposed 100% reprovision of office floor space at pre-application stage. But however, during those design reviews and officer comments and design review panel, it was felt that 4 floors of office floor space for double basement would detract from the quality of the space. And officers also felt that the double basement would detract from, would contribute to carbon emissions and going against sustainability policies in the Southwark plan. In this scheme, we provide a much higher quality of commercial floor space, a more efficient and flexible layout and a lower environmental impact. As such, the scheme does not re-provide full quantum of commercial floor space, but the quality will be much improved. So it is therefore considered acceptable in this instance, and the financial contribution is secured by its loss. The benefit of the scheme would also be the provision of 10% of affordable workspace on the site. As highlighted in the report, the Job Centre and the Upton Blue Optima have been offered alternative accommodation within the same catchment area of equivalent floor space. An applicant has also offered commercial floor space being built and redeveloped Lakeland House as well as this new development. The terms offered are similar to the tenants now have. Nevertheless, despite the applicant's efforts and attempts to engage with DWP, there has not been any response or engagement from them. Despite this, the applicant commits to supporting existing tenants with relocation, and a business relocation strategy will be secured in section 106. This slide shows the other PBSA schemes in Elephant Castle area, including those now under construction, consented, given the resolution to grant concurrent live applications. In a wider area, a total of just over 3,000 beds are in the pipeline, and if they are all constructed, there will also be a delivery of 282 affordable homes on site and a payment in lieu of £84.6 million. This gives a total value of affordable homes value of £141.98 million. The application was accompanied by a student needs assessment which considered the need for PBSA within both the borough and Elephant Castle, and the report also accepts that the student housing proposed here would meet an identified need within Southwark for higher education related facilities, while also supporting opportunity areas wishing to support the area's function as a major town centre and existing universities. It should be pointed out that the PBSA contributes to meeting London's overall housing need and is not addition to this need. By delivering 243 bed spaces, which would be equivalent to 97 homes, we would contribute to realising the housing aspirations of our opportunity area and contributing to Southwark's housing delivery target. So this application does not propose any on-site affordable housing due to the small footprint of the site. It does not easily lend itself to having a separate block of C3 housing. As such, a payment in lieu is being sought. The application is therefore accompanied by a financial viability assessment which has been scrutinised by an independent consultant on behalf of the council. Applicants have offered just over £11 million, which is equivalent to 35% of the rooms, calculated on the new Section 160 SEAL SPD, July 2025, which is £130,000 per habitable room. And that payment in lieu will be used for providing affordable housing in the borough. Looking at the quality of accommodation, the applicant has provided an analysis of the internal daylight and sunlight of the proposed rooms. Of those total 230 rooms assessed, 96.2% will achieve the respective target lumens over at least 50% of the room area. So those rooms most affected are those on the third floor facing the rear, and whilst these fall below the BRE guidance, it is noted that the common areas, such as the living, kitchen, diners, will all exceed the target daylight lumens. So the high level of compliance in this dense London location is considered acceptable. The rooms and studios are of various sizes and are considered generally to be of the size that is acceptable. The roof terrace on the third floor also have good levels of sunlight. As you can see in the first plan here on the left, student rooms facing Newington Causeway would meet the minimum 12 metre distance that's been stipulated in the Residential Design Standards SPD. The windows facing to the rear fall slightly short at 17.8 metres minimum, and the guideline is 21 metres, but this distance isn't considered to fall significantly below the guidelines. This is an inner London central location with north and elevation, and number 2, Avonmouth Street and about House. That would be about 5 to 6 metres. However, these proposed living kitchen dining rooms, shaded in yellow, and student rooms would be on the upper levels, so they would be above the window levels of the existing properties to Avonmouth Street about the house. So there would not be any direct overlooking from those living kitchen diners. In terms of safety and security, the site would join another student accommodation building at Avonmouth House, and this scheme has been considered by the Met Police, designed by a fire officer, and was deemed acceptable. They recommend a 2-part condition that includes requiring a secured by design certificate submitted for approval. There will also be CCTVs and on-site staff 24/7. Turning to the heritage impact, applicant has submitted townscape vision impact assessment. Looking at the views that are most sensitive and have high heritage and townscape significance and prominence, the grade 2 listed in a Simon Sessions report is immediately to the north. So when we view this from the Harper Road, the proposal will be seen across the landscape of all court to the Sessions Road. This height has been carefully calibrated to make around the useful considered living house, and as you can see, the proposed scheme sits below the ridge line of the surrounding buildings and Highland House. There will be a clear space between the development of Avonmouth House and the cumulative views, and ensures that the impacts measured are not overly harmful. So in this case, there is a limited amount of less than substantial harm arising to the setting of the Mr. Sessions Courthouse, but this harm is of a low order of less than substantial. The level of harm can be considered in the planning bounds of the decision maker, and the National Planning Policy Framework advises the decision makers to consider the level of harm in plans against the public benefits arising from the development. The scheme will deliver regeneration benefits, including contribution to those housing targets, including affordable housing payment in lieu, meeting the employment targets, as well as improved public health. The second important view is from Trinity Church Square, which is a conservation area. The development shown in green in the Y line and falls below the parapet line of the townhouses and the church itself with key views. And so it is considered there is no harm arising to the conservation area as a result of this development. The applicant has submitted an assessment of the scheme of the daylight and impact, sunlight impact on neighbouring properties and open spaces. So this diagram just shows that the proposed amenity spaces within the Barry Triangle and Avonmouth House scheme which have sufficient sunlight. The applicant has produced transit boom shadowing diagrams of the approved scheme to further demonstrate how the proposed development cast shadows through the day on the 21st of March. The 2 diagrams here show the comparison between existing and proposed at 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. And as you can see, it is not the proposed building that would have the greatest impact. The Newton Gardens to the south of the site will not be affected. The 2 immediate adjoining properties, Bowden House and 2 Avonmouth Street, to the north are the most affected in terms of daylight and sunlight. This slide just shows the window locations that were tested. These windows face the development site. And this slide presents 2 tables of existing versus proposed VSC or vertical side components and no side along for both those properties. As the report highlights in terms of daylight, the layout and footprint of the house means that the windows to the rear of the property are already constrained. This would also limit light reaching them in the existing situation is relatively low. There are 3 bedrooms and bedrooms that have large proportional reductions in the VSC. The absolute reduction in VSC is relatively minor, it's very minor. Overall, while proportional reductions will be significant, these affected rooms are bedrooms and therefore is less sensitive to daylight reductions as their primary use is for sleeping. On 2 Avonmouth Street, the site facing the site are located to the rear of the property in an already constrained location, meaning that existing light levels are relatively low. small absolute reduction in that can give rise to a large proportional change. In my report, I do say that the resultant absolute reduction is only 1.38% and 2.19%, which is considered very minor, and the loss may be less noticeable. The second and third floor kitchen windows will also experience similarly noticeable reductions in their VSCs, but it is noted that these kitchens are served by roof windows. And the existing bedroom windows and faces are also very low VSC levels in the existing situation. So while they might experience proportional reductions of around 68 to 89%, absolute reduction is not significant. Similarly, the NSL, no skyline reductions, would be around 55 to 71%. Again, these are bedrooms where daylight is less important. Whilst there will be noticeable effect on the sunlight levels, these are just bedrooms and most of the kitchens, whereby the BRE guidance does state loss of sunlight may not be analysed to these rooms. It must be noted that close proximity of these windows to a site allocation development site would inevitably mean that any development there would see some noticeable loss. This application proposes a small area of public ground off Avonmouth Street, contributing to some greening alongside accommodating access, turning and parking areas. There are no existing trees on the site, and the proposal will deliver at least 20 trees, both on the ground floor and third floor roof terrace. The scheme will now achieve an urban greening factor of 0.42, which meets the recommended guidance score, and the application proposes a biodiversity net gain of 652%, and far exceeding the minimum of 10%. The development achieves a total on-site carbon saving of 37.2%, and the remaining carbon shortfall required to meet net zero will be addressed through a carbon offset payment. This is a car-free scheme with the exception of a blue badge parking space, which will be shared with the Avonmouth House development, and waste will be collected by a private contractor, and the refuse vehicles will utilise the servicing function. The tracking diagrams for a smaller refuse vehicle show that they can enter and exit in a forward gear, and there will be adequate cycle parking spaces provided within development and found to be acceptable by the transport planning team. This slide just lists some of the main financial and non-financial Section 106 obligations being secured, and these are further detailed in the main report. So, given the regeneration benefits that this scheme would provide, it is considered as recommended that planning permission be granted subject to conditions, referral to the Mayor of London for signing of the planning Section 106 agreement, and that planning committee in making their decisions due regard to the potential equalities and impacts that are outlined in this report. And if requirements of paragraph 1 is not met by 30th of April 2026, then the Director of Planning and Growth is authorised to refuse planning permission for the reasons set out in paragraph 419 of this report.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask a quick question before I ask other committee members. So, first of all, I do want to say the increase in the urban greening factor since the briefing that we held last week is welcome. So it's good to see the applicants responded to that concern and praise the briefing. I wanted to check about the on slide 39, talks a little bit about the impact of the development on Street in terms of, I think particularly in terms of privacy. And I think you've stated that where the windows are being proposed on that side of the new building is a higher level. So I just really want to understand what's happening at the lower level. Is that just a blank wall or? Thank you. Just to understand that issue, because it's still like a important one to and yeah, and are we asking for obscured glazing of the dining area?
The windows on the student accommodation starts at level 4, so 5 level, those windows are set at a higher level, and there is a condition where there will be further details to be submitted. But where there are the windows lower at the lower levels are commercial uses, which are not living spaces. But if members are minded to approve, we could obscure those windows on the lower levels facing them to Avonmouth Street.
Yeah, that's certainly something to consider, I think. Committee members, questions, I am going to go, I think it's going to run off the table, councillors.
Our presentation had a nice vertical around the construction management side of it on this site, and also given that next to this site or in the vicinity there are also other large scale developments that are on the way that have planning permission, including Borough Triangle and other student housing next door as well, and all of this is quite high rise, and so in terms of managing the construction of all of that together, obviously we're focused on this application today, but first of all, what from the kind of council perspective can we do to ensure that it's all coordinated and that there is a proper coordinated construction management plan in terms of large vehicles on these roads all at the same time, perhaps for these different sites, and then secondly, in terms of particular applicant here, what can we kind of expect of them and perhaps put conditions on in terms of them coordinating with those other developments and sites that are on the way. I think in the report it sounded a bit like TfL had some concerns around this construction side of it, but weren't entirely convinced that there was a good plan at this point. So yeah, it'd be good to get a further thought as well.
Well, firstly, I think Avonmouth House is actually nearing completion already, which you can see from the photos. It's already almost complete, and it is a comment raised by TfL as well about coordination of demolition and construction. There will be in the section 106 an obligation to require submission of further demolition and construction environmental management plan, and there is a financial contribution being secured to our network highways development team, level management team, which will then hopefully coordinate the construction vehicles. But given that the applicant is the owner of the adjoining site, and the coordination of those vehicles would be, I think, much easier. And as already is willingness to complete.
So I think just add to what Ruth said, the other sides, Borough Triangle, large construction sites, so part of the contribution that would go to our network management team is to coordinate those activities, to manage those large vehicles coming in, so they're aware of what's happening and they facilitate dialogue between contractors. Into causeways very different to some of the sites we might have seen that committee. So I think in terms of construction management, it's perhaps less of a headache than something else.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. I'll start with slide 29 as we have that up already. The VSC and NSL stats up there, are they relating just to this development or is that a cumulative assessment? And if this is just for this development, do we know what the cumulative impact of all of the developments surrounding this area will have? I'll ask the second question in a second.
These two tables is just the proposed spending without the other developments coming forward. But the applicant did provide a test on those other cumulative developments coming forward. It's just not represented on the slide, but it's within the main report.
And just for the benefit of the committee, how significant an additional impact does the cumulative impact produce?
In terms of impact on Bower House and Avonmouth Street, there are some instances where there will be further losses, but it's quite similar to what the proposed scenario would be.
Super.
So, sorry, just right down, I think it's in
paragraph 298 and 299 reports, which says that the losses would be about 1.5 to 2.5%. So they're a similar magnitude in terms of the absolute change to the Southwark system.
Thank you both. My second question would be related to slide 24. It's about the floor plates. When we've looked at student accommodation applications in the past, we have, maybe it's not, slide 24 might not be. When we've looked at student applications, student accommodation applications in the past, we have considered the need for single gender floors for some of the floors, so that female students feel more comfortable with a single gender floor, they have that as an option. Is this part of the proposal, and if it is, then could we condition?
I was going to say that's an question for the applicant.
Save that one up, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Whitton.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the urban green factor. The additional bio-solar roof on the lower top roof, is that right up at the very top of the building then? Where the extra really comes?
It is on the, so this building, is 19 stories facing Newton Causeway, with then 18 stories, so it's on top of the 18th story part of the development.
So you wouldn't be able to get trees up.
No,
So what constitutes extra bio-solar roof?
more plan.
It would be sort of low growth, species rich type of matting as you find it. Similar to a seeded roof, but with the type of flora that would work well under partial shading that would also provide fill for the soil.
And are we conditioning the maintenance of that roof?
There is a condition that requires maintenance of the landscape, so it would condition, yes.
Can we condition it specifically? Because
We
it
can
can be
do,
very easily left at any time.
we can do, yes.
And does that also include the parking bit at the bottom for the future?
The question is whether we can condition that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's,
Yes, there is a condition that secures that and maintenance as well.
I'm just concerned that the bit at the entrance, where the parking is, and turning of lorries and all the rest of it, whether that will remain green space. Because of all the vehicles that are using.
The applicant had provided some tracking diagrams which show how those vehicles would enter and exit in forward gear, and we would avoid using those green spaces. There is a condition which requires the maintenance of those landscaping areas, and it will be the section 160 as well.
I have some other questions.
Councillor Bones.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Just wanted to clarify the adjacent site at Avonmouth House on that side. And to your knowledge, do they share a party wall, a shared boundary, or is there a break between the two buildings and sites at any point? Is that something that you're aware of as part of the application, and what the benefits or challenges might be around that going forward when the second building is built out?
There is no party wall.
Okay.
I think we've looked at the distances to make sure that they coexist, but I think in terms of possibly how they work together,
Yeah.
and concerns that might be.
Question for the applicant. And then on the urban green point to pick up from Councillor Whitton, I noted that now that's been exceeded, the £20,000 for additional tree planting, it is now no longer required. But I just wanted to clarify that that didn't impact on the net gain of 20 trees that's cited elsewhere in the report. That's not the same thing. The 20 trees are still being planted, and it was an additional 20,000 for surrounding areas, street trees.
That's right, so those 20 trees being proposed is still provided in the proposal, and that £56,000 was flown towards borough tree planting, which is no longer required.
Okay, but might be welcome.
It would be, but it doesn't meet then, doesn't
No,
meet the seal
but it might be
basis.
welcome. And then I was really taken with the quality of the palette materials and the texture and tone of it, which is very welcome. And I noted the need to sort of harmonise this building with the characteristics of Balfour House and the tones of that, which are bluey grey, and then also sort of playhouse from that wider look, which is white, but the cream and the ductone. So again, it might be a question from the applicant, but around ensuring that during construction works that any remediation is to the surface or renders around Balfour House in particular, and that the final sort of finish and the adjacent buildings is considered, whether or not we might want to put some reference to that going forward. But I mean, I'll raise that with the applicant.
Thank you. Councillor Whittam, you did say earlier you might have some further questions.
Yeah, I was concerned that page 40, the view is very much for some of you. And we were promised at the briefing that we had a weekly view, which has to be provided.
So, yes, Councillor Wilson, that's not been provided to us, but we feel that gives us enough information to assess the impacts on this particular view because of the very limited visibility of the process.
Well, we don't know how difficult it is in room to do this because that's not that view. One other thing is on page 21, the redevelopment of the site should provide new homes, should and may provide a new community house fund. Have we got any sort of house provision anywhere nearby? Because this is not provided on this site.
Yes, we have. So as part of the submission for the H1 plot further south, there's an NHS hub that's been proposed by the developer for that site. They're in fairly advanced discussions with the NHS.
We know about advanced discussion with the NHS. We very often turn to politics. Thank you.
Thank you. So that would be the site that I think Councillor Whittam once described as theirs, wasn't it? Just some clarification. Right, any further questions? Councillor Dalton.
Just to check on a specific point around cycle storage and the report, pages 121, 122, TfL certainly did have concerns originally about the cycle storage space not meeting requirements, essentially. And I was just trying to work out if what the applicant has then come back with in response to that does satisfy our requirements around cycle storage, in your view. And a second question, just quickly around the job centre that's on that site at the moment, and there's you talked through the pre-provision plan for that job centre. Would that mean that there wouldn't be any gap basically in the job centre having a site, whether it's on the same site, whether it's relocated somewhere else? Would that be part of the plan to ensure there's no gap in the job centre not having provision for a few months? Essentially it's continuous, is that the aim?
In terms of the cycle storage, there's been extensive correspondence between applicant and our transport planning team. So some of the amendments include making sure there is enough space for those Joster cycle stores and also having power assisted doors. But the number of parking, cycle parking, 0.75 per bedroom is something that we've generally accepted in the borough, and we have sent those further plans to the TfL, and they haven't really objected, well, but they have provided just further comments. But our transport planning team has found the provision and the design to be acceptable.
And on the job centre, what happens to the job centre will form part of this application. Actually, that would need to be provided, so we will have that information. That's possibly another question for the applicant. That we can try and talk to the DWP about that, which we've got in direct contact with DWP. But the feedback is that DWP haven't been too forthcoming in those discussions.
Yeah, it might be useful to before we move on, just get some guidance on that about, because obviously Job Centre has, it's providing a service to local community, it has, it provides that facility for the local community just to understand the materiality of that in terms of that decision making, whether it has, is that something we can consider or not, is it outside of the scope of this application? Just get some clarity on that.
Yes, I mean, it's certainly could be consideration. But I would say that the applicant has tendency to DWP about it and to establish a conversation about whether or not they need relocation. The applicant is, I believe, happy to back into the commercial space, should they need to do that. DWP would have their own estates management strategy, as other government departments do, like Ministry of Justice. So I would assume that they have a strategy which includes providing that service locally, but they haven't been communicating with either us or the applicants. So we and the applicants are in a position where we are obliged to hold benches to speak to us. Certainly, I would assume they have an issue with it. We mentioned it to the applicants and then we mentioned it to us, but we haven't. Neither we or the applicant have any contact with them.
I think ask the applicant chair about if they're the owner of the building, where the break clause in the current lease is, and what the terms of the current lease with TWP, that would be known by hopefully one if not both parties. How long is the lease for and when's the break clause?
Again, that might be something we want to address with the applicant.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think that might be a good time to raise it. Councillor Wilson, I see you indicate again.
Yeah, just my usual question to Colin is, when will we have enough street accommodation?
A very good question, Councillor Wilson. That's why we find a summary of schemes currently presented in construction. Certainly to date, in terms of completed schemes within the borough, we have got to the point of meeting the need which is assessed in the civic plan. The record of schemes which have planning permission doesn't necessarily mean they'll be implemented as per planning permissions usually we can't make them. Some of those on that list, there's a couple there, which don't seem to be making any progress since we implemented anyway. We are tracking this because my assumption is and I know from looking at research into student housing, that probably the rental levels can reach that plateau. There is still more demand than there is supply. And then the other thing that is a very material consideration to the point that Wing made about the benefits that sort of plan policy delivers in terms of on-site affordable housing and payments in lieu. Something unique in London in having that kind of policy, and it potentially delivers really considerable benefits in a very difficult economic climate and also climate funding affordable housing, because we are the only local authority that has to support on-site and or payments in lieu. And I'm aware that our neighbouring authorities, Lambeth in particular, are looking at that policy approach, because as their policy stands at the moment, they ask for new payments in lieu or on-site when their student comes forward in their policy. More recently, they have been negotiating payments in lieu, but they have no position to ask for on-site forward. Two things. One is continue monitoring the delivery, so that we can make the decision as we know obviously on that. But the second thing is that it does bring significant social benefits at a time when it is very, very challenging to deliver affordable housing.
I'm just going to ask a follow-up question. So, there is obviously a question about the borough's overall target in terms of student housing, so that 10,000 figure that we have to provide as part of the London plan. I know that somebody whose ward has a similar issue, but it does seem to be a very high concentration, as I think that the slide that's currently up shows, in the Elephant and Castle. And so about 10,000, a third being delivered here, a third being delivered at another location. 10,000 across all of Southwark doesn't seem too much. So there's 3,500 in a fairly tight area. Does feel like quite a lot, so just to understand considerations we might need to have around the saturation.
I think there are, again, a couple of things to consider there, which is developments coming forward next to student housing. So, as we pointed out earlier, there is very significant residential scheme coming forward next door by a triangle. This part of this monitoring exercise is making sure that you don't reach total saturation of student housing. The reason for that locational pull, if you like, is that there are the universities in Elephant and Castle, so it is a sensible place and also a policy compliant place for student housing. The Old Kent Roads attraction is again that kind of accessibility of the road to these universities and down the road to Goldsmiths. So it's kind of an ongoing review of how many things are there, and also making sure that you don't end up literally the streets with just student housing, but also reviewing the conventional residential in with it, next to it, and also the commercial going forward. So as the chair will understand, the thing we're looking at is to both on the plan mixed and inclusive communities. And although the concentration in Southwark is Old Kent Roads, Elephant Castle, to a lesser degree, some in Canada Water, Southwark is different from other boroughs, and I'm thinking of Brent in particular, where all their student housing is in London, so it's just all concentrated in one place. So there still is some geographic dispersion in Southwark at the moment, although most of it's in the north of the borough. In a plan, monitor, review world, and in a plan-led system, we're carrying on with that monitoring and reviewing, both of the absolute numbers, but also the social benefits that flow from that in the operation of the current policy.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further indications, so I think we're going to move on. So this is the point where we ask for representations to be made to the meeting. So first of all, is there anybody here who wishes to speak in objection to the application? So would you like to come forward to the table in front where the microphones are? So just to say a few words first. First of all, just so that you're aware, this meeting is being live streamed and the recording will be available on the Council's YouTube channel. So when you introduce yourself, I think I'm aware of where you are from, which I believe is an address in Avonmouth Street, is that correct? Correct, yeah. But you don't need to disclose which flat number you are or anything, because obviously we don't want that private information in the public domain to ensure people's safety and privacy. So what I'm going to do is first of all ask you to introduce yourself, and then once you've done that, I will give you 3 minutes to speak, and I'll let you know sort of about 30 seconds, sort of 2.5 minutes in, that you only got about 30 seconds left, and then we'll ask some questions after that, if that's okay. First of all, introduce yourself. Yeah, right, sorry, yeah, so yeah, press the button at the front, and when it turns red, speak.
All right. Okay, so hi, my name is Louis Leach, and I live adjacent to the boundary on the northeast side of the Southwark proposed site.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay. So my name is Louis Leach, and I'm going to object to the application in its current form. First, I want to say that I do not want to stand in the way of improvements, benefits to the community, or payments in lieu, which I can see to the council. I'm here in the hope that the members would not just simply rubber stamp the application plan as they are without giving us immediate residents time to suggest alternatives to the developer's current plans, or at least some amendments to them. Suggestion 1 includes making the main entrance to any proposed building via the main road on Newton Causeway. I know the commercial one is, but also the student block. As always has been the case, fire exits, emergency exits and servicing could be kept at the rear of the property. The main entrance should always be on Newington Causeway. It would be easier for the travelling students to access the building with less time to travel to and from the tube stations, bus stops, etc., instead of creating a nightmare scenario. For us, hundreds of people will be passing our front door, around the side and to the back of our house, and entering and congregating outside the main entrance and below our bedroom windows. Suggestion 2 is to not create an external amenity terrace outdoors on the 3rd floor. That will create another potential nightmare for us residents throughout the day and night. This area is something we can do without. It's simply not necessary. With Newington Gardens 40 metres away, with over 44 acres of woodland full of seating areas everywhere. Suggestion 3 is to restrict the visibility overlooking, and I welcome the councillor fitting obscured glass to the commercial areas. We have obscure glass fitted in our corridor windows, and any new building should fit obscure glass to all proposed stairwells, kitchen, dining areas, and at the very least, if not some of the bedroom windows that face our children's bedrooms, 5 metres away from the boundary line. Suggestion 4 is to not encourage seating areas around the flank of our Victorian home. Our Bay area, it's been mentioned that it's a block of flats. We're not a block of flats, we're a Victorian converted house. This is to reduce the noise that will clearly emanate from the Bay Area. The acoustics of the design will amplify the sound upwards. Every coming and going from the students, all the conversations, the laughing, the shouting, the chatting overnight, talking in the middle of the night, constant food deliveries from bike couriers, Amazon deliveries, etc. We are asking to remove the seating areas that's proposed. This is not welcome by us as the residents, and only serves for the students to loiter, smoke, vape, and create social media videos or what have you. Please consider these improvements to the current plans. None of these suggestions eat into any of the profits in Round 6 payments. I would be happy to work with developers to work around the modifications, but I just don't want to be essentially the sacrificial lamb for the benefit of the property investors and speculators. I understand there's no one here that lives within 100 metres of where I do, but it's not a site, it's my home. A few months of positive contribution can avert a lifetime of misery for us, as well as for a huge loss in value to our own homes personally. So please empathise and rule for a more consultation time rather than granting the application.
Thank you very much. That was precisely 3 minutes, so well done. Questions to the objector? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming on to speak to the committee tonight. Have you had any engagement with the applicant about the concerns? And if you have, what was their response to your proposals?
I haven't. They seem nonchalant about it. They came around because they were missing windows. I told them originally that your daylight sun report is missing windows, and they came round, and as I've mentioned, I did circulate actually a report, a final objection report to some of the councillors, but I know that 4 of the councillors are not here, so I feel at further disadvantage. But I did engage, I had a brief conversation because they came around and they appeared out of nowhere. And but they didn't want to speak to me. The property's developer themselves was present with a daylight and sunlight reporting surveyor, but there was no conversation other than if I initiated the conversation. They seemed not interested. Essentially, I asked my surveyor that was present, what was the purpose of the developer to be there since he didn't engage, and they were baffled. They were present and observed, but made no contribution, had no interest whatsoever. It was pointless. But again, one of the other things I'm mentioning that is that the report that they've submitted, the cumulative report, again lists windows that are not on the report. So the spreadsheet lists calculations for a diagram that don't match, and then the diagram lists a couple of windows that are not matching on the spreadsheet. And so one of the reasons I wanted further time, initially they missed windows, and when they submitted the report, which is in Ms. Lau's report, the diagrams and the reports don't match, so it doesn't give me confidence that the analysis of those daylight sun reports are accurate. And I would want my own surveyor to have a look at them, which they haven't done. So it's one of those areas. So looking at, that's my concern. So they haven't engaged, and they don't look interested, to be honest. But again, I don't want to stop the benefits. I can see there are benefits to the community. I don't want to do that. I understand it looks like I'm going to be a sacrificial lamb in this project, but I don't want to. Far be it from me. I can see that a lot of people are going to benefit. People would probably need housing more than I do. I don't want to block that. I just want them to change the plans so that we don't essentially live in a nightmare scenario. There was earlier comment here talking about building sites. The Inner London Crown Court annex is also just been approved for demolition. That's directly in front of our building. So we're going to have demolition to the front, the Aylmerman house, which we've just had to live for 2 years. If this is approved today, demolition, I understand, is going to commence next year. It's just endless, not excluding the Borough Triangle. As you were mentioning here, I was listening to these vehicles all over. We are essentially in the middle of a massive building site. I would desperately want some coordination going forward as to how these operations, I'd like to see the TFL plan for how everything is going to be managed. I understand, like I said, I'm probably the only person, it's the only house there, and there's lots of commercial buildings there, but the other side, if you look at it from my point of view, I've been there for years, for 3 decades, it's my home. And so I can understand that the world's moving on. It's also referenced in Ms. Lau's report that these are second bedrooms, these are kitchens, they are kitchen dining rooms. The world's moved on since the house was converted in 1984. But we use our laptops, we work from home, we rely on the daylight coming into those bedrooms. They're not unused second bedrooms that the BRSE doesn't want to even compute. They've got some windows on there that have been built into the house to let that daylight. These are not part of the report. They're considered to be corridors. But the way our apartment is laid out, it's a spine corridor going in and then branching out into the individual rooms. So we pass that spine corridor that's not in the assessment constantly, day in. If you go to the bathroom, we pass that corridor. These daylight and science reports are not realistic of living in that environment that's effectively going to be taken away from us. That daylight is precious. We spend more time every day. From the minute we wake up, you don't go to work and you work from home, that's 8 hours you're going to be in a dark and dingy environment. That wasn't there, hasn't been there for 30 years. I didn't buy the property so that I could have been taken away from me. I understand there's no provision within the Section 106 for people like me. I live 4 meters from the boundary and I will get nothing. I'm in a lose-lose scenario. I understand there's no one here that lives with it and it's just another property investment site. But for me, it's my home. I've been there for years. I've invested sweat and brown money in there. I'm going to lose it like that. In a flash, when this application is stamped granted, the value of my home goes down 100,000. In speaking to my local estate agent, he says if that planning permission goes down, it's gone. Where's my recompense for it? There's nothing there. All I can do is come here and speak for 3 minutes. And that's all I'm giving. It's a minute for every decade I've lived there. That's all I get. And I can understand, like I said before, I don't want to stop all the benefits of the community. I don't want that. All I want is some adjustments, 3 main points that will make a huge difference to my living standards every day that I live there. I wake up in the morning, I will hear the students coming in around the back of my house, underneath my bedroom window. They'll be there. They'll be there 4 meters away, chatting, talking. I won't be able to say anything because permission's been granted. And I can't receive any benefits. when I go to try and sell the place, if I want to try and remove from there, they'll just say, well, you've got no daylight, you know, it's a pretty dingy place. It wasn't when I moved in, but no one's going to care. I understand that. But like I said, I don't want to stop them. With 3 of those adjustments, that will make a huge difference.
Mr. Leach.
I would work for it.
Make the point. Yes,
Sorry.
thank you very much. No, I understand how important it is
It's
to
passionate
your
for me, that's
councillor.
all.
No, that's fine. That's no problem at all. But we do have another question from Councillor Rose.
No, it's fine.
That's all right. Any further questions? I thank you, Mr. Leach, very much going forward. I think you have given us a lot to think about, and thank you for your email earlier today, because that has raised some important questions for us, and we will be following up those points with the applicants, and certainly we will be seeing if there's any compromises that can be made on some of those matters to be brought forward. And you know, as a committee, it's really important for us to hear all the evidence, so thank you very much for coming forward today.
I appreciate you, Steve.
That's all right. Is there anything further you would like to impress upon us that you've not had a chance to raise?
No, I would welcome, even the 3 main points I mentioned, I would welcome those, but as you mentioned, the commercial area at the back glazing would be hugely important to us, and anything that you can suggest.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Leach, for coming to talk to us. It's always really important for us to hear the concerns of local objectors, and the residents are going to be thoroughly engaged. So if you'd like to return to the public seating area. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'd like the applicant or the applicant's agents to come forward, please. And again, if you could introduce yourselves, and once you've done that, again, I'll give you 3 minutes with a sort of 30-second report towards the end.
Hi, I'm Phoebe Jones from Your Tribe.
And I'm Nick Lawrence from Your Tribe. I think we'll be talking for the majority, and we've got our technical consultant team to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a senior planning manager at Your Tribe. We're a specialist student accommodation developer and operator established to help solve the undersupply of housing in the capital. We're also excited to be adding a brand new employment space and affordable workspace to our commercial portfolio. We've worked proactively with your offices and design review panel to help develop our proposals to make a well-designed, high-quality contribution to the delivery of the site location, which provides a significant contribution to affordable housing in the borough of over £11 million, brand new quality commercial space including affordable workspace, student accommodation alongside landscaping and new trees. We're an experienced developer. We intend to commence work as soon as possible to deliver all of these benefits and ensure that the affordable housing contribution is actually paid to you expediently. The development would make effective use of a prominently located and underutilised brownfield site allocation to deliver high quality sustainable development that complies with the council's aspirations for the area and site allocation. Across the University of Arts London and London Southwark University, which are the 2 universities based in Elephant Castle, there are currently over 33,000 students studying. This number is likely to grow over the next 5 years. Including universities within 1 mile of the site, the current number of students studying increases to over 80,000. If students in the are forced into private rented accommodation, this has further knock-on issues. Data from the rental platform Spare Room shows that as of March 2025, 5.4 people were competing for each room to rent in South East London. We propose to prioritise the delivery of general needs affordable housing in the borough, which would be provided in the form of a payment in lieu of over £11 million, which is equivalent to 35% affordable housing by habitable rooms, because the size of the site does not allow for on-site conventional housing alongside the commercial space as well as PBSO. The scheme provides a significant amount of employment space as well as affordable workspace and a ground floor cafe, which will animate the building frontage and deliver flexible, high-quality space for businesses and users. Additional Section 106 and SIL contributions will provide payments for sustainable transport infrastructure and local employment and training. As Nick mentioned, I'm joined by members of the technical and design team and happy to respond to points raised earlier. I've just made some notes of some of the points that have been asked by members and by the local resident. Would you like to refresh any of them, or would you like me to?
30 seconds left to speak. And
I'm probably not going to get through all of that, so I'll pause for now.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, questions for the applicant? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming along tonight. Would you like to run through your thoughts? You mentioned you had some responses to issues that have been raised.
Yes, I have made some notes. You may have to remind me if I'm missing anything. So just to clarify the relationship between the Avonmouth House site and the Newington Causeway site, we call it Old Coburn House, there is no third-party land in between, so the land boundaries run contiguous. There is no physical wall in between the sites, and there's no physical connection that's proposed as part of the development. In terms of the kind of quality of the finishes that you discussed in regard to Upper House, what we would normally do is the council would require a detailed design and materials planning condition, and we would invite officers and design officers to site to view samples of those materials, as well as providing specifications to them as part of that condition. So we would happily kind of engage on that and discuss a range of appropriate materials, if that answers the question. In terms of the points around obscure glazing, the windows that face on from the commercial development at the back of the site onto the neighbours are actually windows within a stairwell, so it's absolutely fine for us to obscure those. We can do that, and I'm happy to agree condition wording with officers for that and any other windows in the scheme. We could perhaps go through them all on the 3D model and just confirm an additional planning condition to agree that that's not a problem. And then in relation to the comments raised by Mr. Leach, we haven't got a record of any correspondence coming to our Your Tribe website via our kind of main email address, or any email correspondence coming via our public consultation website that's been running since the public consultation launched sort of October last year. So we weren't necessarily aware of the full scope of some of these comments, but nonetheless, in terms of the external amenity terrace, officers have proposed an additional planning condition controlling those hours. We would obviously be happy to discuss with the resident if there needs to be any further restriction of those hours. If they're felt to be too broad by the resident, we can look at controlling that. It's also worth noting that from a management perspective, we will be able to access control that, so we do have the ability to turn it on and off if you like. So we're more than happy to negotiate, agree on that, or perhaps put in a kind of management and monitoring plan for that should issues arise. And then I think the visibility and overlooking point has been dealt with through the obscure glazing. In terms of the public realm area and the landscaping that's provided at the rear of the site where the PDSA access is, the area is not really intended to fulfil a kind of park-like experience because of its size and also its proximity to Newington Gardens. We had proposed some informal seating there to kind of add some character and design to the area. It's not an essential for us, so if it's felt to be required, we would be able to agree an updated design to that via detailed planning condition, which we would happily consult with the resident on to make sure that if there is seating proposed, it's not near the boundary with any existing residential properties, and we'd happily take seating out if it was deemed appropriate by officers and members, so that's not an issue. In terms of the business relocation and the job centre, so as a landlord, they're not obligated to tell us what their future proposals are. That's their prerogative. We do understand that we do suspect that they will have started their search for accommodation in the area, and it's also just worth noting that really receiving resolution to grant tonight is only the start of the process for us actually being able to get to site. As you're aware, we've got to go to stage 2 of GLA and agree to sign a section 106 by April 2026.
we'd like to do it quicker than that, but that gives you an idea as to the assumptions we make on how long these things can take to agree. Then we have to start the detailed design process in order to be able to submit our Gateway 2 application to the building safety regulator, as this is a high-risk building being over 6 storeys. That is a significant amount of work that requires full coordination from a number of technical disciplines, as well as input from a contractor. So during that time, we'll also be commencing tender discussions with contractors. That in total is about 9 to 12 months worth of work before we can really submit. Once we've submitted, we hope that we'll get approval quickly, but based on our experience and experience of other developers in London, that can take upwards of 6, 9, 12 months to achieve. So as soon as we, hopefully achieve resolution to grant tonight, we are then able to give the DWP a real time frame of the expected stages of this process, and we'll be able to clearly give them a very decent amount of time to look to relocate, because we won't be able to start demolishing this building tomorrow or even this year. There is quite a lot of work that needs to be done before anything can start on that site, which will give them ample time to relocate. And all of this will be set out in the business relocation strategy that will be developed for the Section 106 agreement. And just because it's in a Section 106 doesn't mean that we haven't already, attempted to have some of these conversations with them. It's just we'll kind of flesh the material of that report out with officers, and once the Section 106 is being discussed. I'm sure I missed something, so I'll...
Thank you. Go back to Council. Did you want to follow up on that point, Mr. Johnson?
If I may, and I'm sure I will list some things to you, but there was a request from Mr. Leach to consider relocating the main entrance onto Newton Crossing rather than onto the side road. And also there was the question of single gender floors.
In regards to single gender floors, that's absolutely something we can commit to, and I would maybe suggest that that could form part of the obligation of the student management plan if that feels like the appropriate place, so it's secured by Section 106. In terms of the location of the entrance to the PBSA, I wonder if it's possible to get a ground floor planner, if that's not... So you'll see that because of the need to activate the frontage onto Newington Causeway, the priority has been given to that commercial unit and the commercial access, and blue stair on that frontage is the access to the upper commercial floor, so that all of the commercial kind of visitor and user facing frontage is prioritised for the commercial uses, which is kind of the right thing to do in terms of the site allocation. The green stair provides an access to the PBSA. So what's the main entrance is via the purple double doors in the purple zone at the rear of the site across the public ground. That is really the kind of the reception and the staff entrance where there's some student community. In reality, students, once they're living here, will come in via their nearest entrance, which for many students coming from Alexander Castle Tube is going to be that green entrance, which is onto Newington Causeway. The reason that we've put the reception within the purple area at the rear of the site is because it allows for us to have a kind of more activated reception area, which is something really important for us for being able to check in with our students and see our students and make sure we know who's accessing the property. So we like to have a more generous and open reception with a kind of lounge area, because it just helps us keep an eye on that kind of active surveillance of our residents. And in order to have the space to do that, it really does need to be separate from where that commercial entrance zone is, because you'll see from the frontage it's fairly constrained. But we do believe that obviously once students are moved in, they don't need to be coming past reception every day. They'll really be using the green access, which will obviously be CCTV and fob access control for security. It's just the reception that's at the back.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
Just on that exact point, can you give us a bit more information about the boundary treatment to the rear of Avonmouth House? Because as we look at that diagram, and you've given an explanation as to why the entrance, the main student entrance, is on that side, but further to the residents' concerns about acoustics, noise, and general amenity, what is the proposal around to the rear of that residential housing there? There's
Yes.
a void of space, and then there's an outline there, and then we're into your sort of footprint, aren't we?
Yeah, so in terms of the boundary condition, I'm not 100% sure exactly what there is currently in terms of whether there's a fence around that. I believe that there is, but it's not always possible to know from looking on site whose land that boundary sits on. In terms of the landscape buffer, that's been deliberately put there along the side boundary to Overmouth Street to provide that kind of offset so that there is a bit of a buffer between the public ground and the parking area and the building. We'd be happy to kind of accept further details by condition in terms of dealing with that boundary treatment, because I believe there will also be some level changes there as well. So that is all going to need to be worked out as part of the detailed landscaping conditions, and we'd happily agree to fence or further planting if that's deemed appropriate.
So there seems to be sort of an inbuilt tension between trying to do the right thing in terms of landscaping here on the third floor terrace versus the adjacent neighbours' concerns about creating an environment which will reduce their amenity. So I think you suggested that you're open to final design stage engagement, and I just wanted to understand why I presume you've done in-person engagement sessions as well as the website that's been in person, and what after this event, what further consultation and opportunities you'll get to work with residents, especially in the property that's adjacent, to sort that out. And then I've raised previously, now that you're satisfying the urban green factor, and you're planting 20 trees, is that 20 part of that treatment, which I just don't want to lose anything in terms of all negotiations around then, to sort of lock in that as a minimum, along with, so what you would have also done an additional £20,000 worth of tree planting, but I don't know how we can resolve that other than it being built based on a trusted approach that you would try and endeavour to do those things.
So I'll cover the tree point first. So the landscape plan will form part of the approved plans, so we can't not do it because it won't be in compliance with the planning permission. The section 106 requires a habitat management plan under the biodiversity net gain regulation. So the tree planting forms part of that biodiversity net gain, so will be secured in section 106, as well as by way of detailed planning condition on the landscaping. So officers will get further opportunities to consult with their own specialist officers on it and to scrutinise the details we're putting forward, and to make sure that we're delivering that UGS strategy as we set out in this planning application at this stage. In terms of the connecting with residents, what I'm proposing that we do is, because obviously we have Overmouth House next door, we have a live staff manned reception area there, which any members of the public can visit and talk to us. In addition to that, we'll also do a mail drop with putting our contact details on to set up further engagement with any of the additional the neighbours in proximity as we get into detailed design. And I'm very happy to commit to that now. We'll do a mail drop to facilitate in-person engagement. That's fine.
And a resolution of the boundary treatments in consultation with the residents.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Whitson.
This new area of greening on the lower top floor, is there access to that area?
Yeah, so there's not kind of access for students to be able to get through to that, but we'll have a maintenance access that allows access to be kind of come through student room when that room isn't in use, and then the maintenance access will allow for someone to come onto that, because we wouldn't expect that somebody would need to be coming onto there especially frequently, so we just kind of allow maintenance access informally. We wouldn't allow students to come onto that area.
I just don't want it to be
exactly, yes, and from our perspective, the solar PV won't function as well if the landscape around it isn't maintained. So we have a clear imperative to make sure that we're maintaining all of that because we want to realise the full benefits from the PV panels as well.
Thank you. Do you want to follow up? Yes.
No, it's a different question.
Sorry.
It's a different question.
It's a different question. Go on, councillors.
Did you not do any knocking on doors with the neighbours?
We did. Our PR consultant and I, on a Thursday afternoon, walked around the two residential blocks, 12 Stevenson House on the other side of the on the other side of Avonmouth Street, and we did knock on doors, and we did. But you'll appreciate that not everyone necessarily wants to come to the door, not everyone wants to speak to you, and indeed not everyone's at home when we came to visit. So we did undertake that, and it's detailed in the statement of community involvement, and we did speak to a number of residents. I can't remember exactly which addresses, but clearly it was during the daytime and not everybody was around, but we did publicise our public consultation that we held in the Rockingham Community Centre, and letters went out to over 900 properties for that, and we had 10 attendees. And we did do an online webinar as well for anyone that wasn't able to make that in person. So we do feel that we attempted to reach as much of the community as we feasibly could.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on that. I mean, certainly welcome that you have this public meeting, that you set out notices, that you knocked on doors in Telford and Stevenson houses. It does strike me though from this application that the Balcus House and number 2 and number 2A Avonmouth Street would be particularly affected by this. So just to understand, if you were knocking on doors in Telford House and Stevenson House, did you knock on doors there as well?
We did, yes. I can confirm that.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Dawson.
Thank you for the presentation. We were discussing a little bit along the construction side of things earlier, construction management, and keen to hear a bit more around, firstly, how you will work and coordinate with other big developments going on in the area, such as Borough Triangle, recently got consent, to make sure that this happens safely, and secondly, how will you involve local residents in that side of things in terms of both keeping them informed of what will be happening in terms of construction, but also getting their input in terms of the experience of being a local resident and what they're seeing in terms of large vehicles on their streets.
So on the point about liaising with developers, we'd be more than happy to kind of engage where, either the borough's highway team or CFL pick up through the various the various condition documents and 106 documents, that there could be overlapping in construction timeframes. So we would be happy to engage with kind of our neighbouring developers. What does genuinely happen in a lot of sites like this in areas in London where you do have multiple developers is that contractors will themselves arrange kind of frequent catch-ups with their neighbours because clearly they want to avoid their own kind of potential risks and inefficiencies arising from clashes. So that's something we will definitely pick up on, and obviously when TfL review all of the further kind of detailed documents that officers set out, TfL will also have the opportunity to raise any concerns or potential conflicts because they will have the benefit of seeing everybody's construction logistics information and understanding, for example, the traffic routes that all of the different developers are proposing, and they can to some extent understand and determine that there won't be clashes. In terms of kind of resident engagement and contractors, so we only work with contractors that are part of the considerate contractors scheme. So in doing so and achieving that accreditation will require contractors to publicise all of their details and send around a monthly bulletin setting out the activity proposed for that month, what's going to be happening, and some of the kind of big major elements that might be happening with the construction at that period. So what we would propose we do is kind of through sort of resident liaison via the contractor, we look to kind of consolidate a database of interested people that need to be informed of that, and that would operate as a kind of two-way communication. And that's, you know, we only work with contractors that are used to dealing with these types of sensitive London sites that have lots of neighbours, and as such they're very used to dealing with some of the you know, issues that might be faced with neighbours and kind of timing that. Another point, you probably want me to be quiet now, but another point to raise is that all our contractors will use kind of a delivery booking system, so that in terms of vehicular movements in and out, then you have to come within your allotted time to site, so that we don't end up with clashes, and we can specify the hours that they need to take deliveries to avoid any kind of particular peak time. So sometimes if you're proposing a scheme near a school, you will specify those school times that are sensitive. So we can kind of have further conversations with officers on that around the kind of detail of the construction logistics and demolition logistics plans.
Thank you. Councillor Woodson?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm with you the hours of use to be reserved for terrace.
So in the planning condition that was in the addendum report, I believe that they are 7 AM until 10 PM. But I'm more than happy to open that back up for discussion and to agree a reduction of those hours if it's felt warranted on certain days or on all days or for different seasons. And I'd be happy to either agree a condition now following committee, or agree, if you like, so agree a condition where we need to go and have that conversation to allow some further consultation with residents and come back to the borough with what our proposal is. But I'll leave that with officers to agree that.
Can I just add, we have on other terraces have agreement for no advertising.
Yeah, I think what I would like to do is certainly have a condition about consideration about the terrace. And for me, I know those points that the council was made, I think, very important. But I also, the design that's set out, we've got here, looks reasonably good. I think in terms of keeping people away from the edge that's closest away from our street, but obviously what we agree in terms of permission and that coming through are two separate things. So I think some detailed design about that gets approved would be helpful to try and ensure that there isn't, the noise from people using the terrace is kept away from that edge as well would be helpful if that is to be there, as well as looking at the hours. Because I think, that is something which I could see if there are people sort of hanging over that edge or whatever. Even if they're just sort of talking and chatting there, I'm sure it would be quite disruptive. If you're living in a house not very far away from that site. So, I think having that as a sort of reserve condition, I think would be helpful to look into that in more detail. Councillor Rose, did you get your hand up there?
I had a similar point around the screening of the terrace and the further design work. I think we've addressed some of the issues. The point around the design and the strength of the palette and the design in reference to the surrounding buildings. It was more about during the construction period your commitment to ensuring that any accidental or impact through dust, vibration and noise will be offset and remediated for the adjacent properties, and how you go about monitoring that as well, because a building may well designed for a considered new building, you don't want to be able to be detrimental to the existing stock around it. So I just want to know a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a separate piece of legislation called the Parcel Wall Act governs the agreements between neighbouring properties where there is development happening on one. So all of the details for that will be set out and agreed between two parties, building surveyors, and that will include the need to monitor any conditions on either side, to either side, depending on what that survey finds. So that's absolutely, it's governed by a different set of legislation to planning legislation, but it's something that we'll obviously be committed to.
And so just to add further, we talked about hours of operation for community space. I just wanted to understand from your perspective whether the tenure of these buildings would be for 48 weeks or 30 weeks, or that there would also be parallel summertime, out of term time use, because residents' concerns might be that if there's an extended term time or in the summer and that it was occupied by either students or other occupiers, that might heighten the perception of the impact on their amenity. But if it was limited to term time occupation, then residents would also know there'd be a respite before September from the end of July onwards.
Yeah, so on our current operational sites, we do have a range of tenancy lengths. So sometimes it's 51 weeks, sometimes it's 48, sometimes it's 42, sometimes it's 38, depending on that particular student's course. Typically in the summer, we do see that things are a bit quieter, which is kind of inevitable, particularly for undergraduates who have quite long summer holidays. But we do remain open for the summer period, and we will have some summer occupancy, especially from postgraduate students whose degrees tend to run more calendar year than academic year. So there will still be students in occupation, but as a matter of this is the reality of students in the summer months, that the occupancy does reduce, even if the tenancy lengths are there.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further indications, so I've got two further questions. First of all, sort of quite a specific one. So just in terms of the diagram we've got up at the moment, just to understand, so you were talking about the operation of the reception area. I noticed there's a number of other doors that are facing into that courtyard space at the rear to number 2 and to a Avonmouth Street. So just to understand what those other doors are doing. One, are those in and out doors? Are they fire escapes? What would be those doors being used for?
So the majority of those doors are providing direct discharges from escape stairs. So they are a requirement as part of the design.
Yeah. So it would.
You're aware, so it would be students will not be directed to use those doors. They are their majority to provide escape from.
So in terms of day-to-day, certainly the entrances into the building, you have the double doors by the reception desk, and as you said, you also have use of the passageway doors onto Newington Causeway. Those would be principal entrances. Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, so that was a very specific one. The next one is a bit more general. So if we were to approve, it sounds as if from committee there is a number of conditions. So I might ask committee's help on this, but I've been making a list, I think, what those might look like. So I've got quite a few, so just wanted to go through them all at this stage to see whether, just to clarify you're happy with them, or to see whether we need to sort of review that and where we are. So first of all, we talked about having obscure glazing for those windows that be facing onto the homes on Avonmouth Street.
Yes.
Secondly, condition about the maintenance of the bio-solar roof.
Yes.
Thirdly, about as part of the management plan of the building, ensuring or consideration, further discussion with our office about single gender floors.
Yes, that's fine.
Having that, as I said, coming back with more details on the design of the terrace.
Yes.
And some further consultation about the hours of operation of the terrace.
Yes.
And ensuring there's no amplified music on there.
Yes.
The removal of the seating that was proposed outside the entrance onto Avonmouth Terrace.
Yes.
And finally, because I think there is so much, and I think given we are so aware of the sensitivities on the homes on Avonmount Street, that you're happy that there's consultation about the details that are coming back with members of the public, in particular those properties that are immediately adjacent to the property.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The boundary treatment seems to be resolved.
Right.
So
Okay.
The boundary treatment.
Sorry, let's add that to the list as well, so thank you. So that was I think that's an 8th condition, but are you happy with that as well?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anything else I've missed, committee? Councillor Johnson.
Very quick question, and may seem a bit silly, but given there's a lot of consultation results and concerns that Mr. Leach you have raised, I thought we should just check whether you are happy to engage in further consultation with the applicant to discuss these changes.
I am.
Okay, I'm being advised we might need to take some legal advice, but what we will do is we will first get through the rest of the representations. Any further questions for the applicants at this stage? No, well, thank you very much for coming forward, and thank you for the cooperation and help that you've given. So thank you. If you'd like to return to the public seating area. Okay, I'm now going to ask, do we have any supporters of the application within the 100 metres of the site in the room? We don't. I don't see any ward councillors present either. So I'm going to ask that we have a short adjournment while we take some legal advice. Hopefully it's only 5 minutes. I'm going to ask everybody, I'm afraid, to leave the room for 5 minutes. We will obviously disclose what we discussed in that confidential session when we come back, but we will have a quick discussion about legal officers and we'll invite back in. Okay, thank you everybody. We're just taking a little bit of legal advice. So just to clarify, the question that we were considering in our second legal advice was about whether we were asking for the details of those conditions around the committee. I think we're clear that we're not asking for those from the committee, and therefore we can go ahead and make a decision today. We've also sort of, I think, tidied up slightly some of the conditions, because some of them we think we can encompass into some modifications to condition 14 that's already set out. And just to be specific about that, that condition 14 is around hard and soft landscaping. So those points that were about the design of the terrace, about the removal of the seating by the entrance outside, and about the boundary treatment that Councillor Rose raised, those are all going to be captured within an amended condition 14 to make sure all of those elements are included. So the other additional conditions are the obscuring of the glazing for those parts facing the Avonmount Street homes, maintenance of bio-solar roof, about the single gender floors being included as part of the student management plan. Hours of use for terrace, we have proposed, we should have a change of that, so the starting time is 8 AM rather than 7 AM, although I think including the 10 PM is a reasonable end time. And finally, about there is consultation community before officers approve the final versions of those conditions, final details of the application.
No amplified music.
Oh, sorry, yes, and no amplified music on the terrace as well. Okay. Do members of the committee have any final last questions, any further comments on this? in that case, with those conditions that we've discussed, I would like to propose that we adopt the officer's recommendations set out in paragraph 1 to 3 of the report on pages 28 and 29 of the main agenda pack, that full planning permission is granted, subject to conditions set out in the report, the addendum report, and those we have just discussed. Referral to the Mayor of London and the applicant entering into the satisfactory legal agreement. And secondly, the planning committee in making their decision has due regard to potential equalities impacts are outlined in this report. And finally, that in the event of the requirements of paragraph 1 above not having been met by the 30th of April 2026, the Director of Planning and Growth be authorised to refuse planning permission if appropriate for reasons set out in paragraph 422 of this report. Does any member wish to second this? Councillor Johnson, thank you. I'm going to ask everybody how they wish to vote on this. Councillor Whittam.
For, Chair.
Councillor Dalton. For, Chair. Councillor Johnson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Rose.
For, Chair.
I'm Councillor Richard Livingstone. I'm also voting for that. The motion is carried and the application is granted. Thank you, everybody. Safe journey